Hey there, members of the Night Crew, and folks who just love horror. Welcome to the Night Crew podcast, where shadows breathe and monsters listen. This is the podcast where we get cozy with the creepy, the frightening, and the just plain undead. I'm your host, Brad Ricks. Now, before we get started tonight, a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you've been enjoying the show, there's an easy way to help it grow. Subscribe wherever you're listening, leave a rating if you got 30 seconds to spare, and share an episode with somebody just as crazy as we are. Also, if you want signed copies of any of my novels, you can grab them straight from me over at bradricks.com. I shouldn't have to spell that. That's pretty easy to guess. Plus, just look at the podcast. And speaking of books, Night Crew 3 Hunting Ground is on the way, July 3rd. Mark your calendars. And last, join my Facebook group. There will be a link in the show notes, or just go to Facebook and search for Brad Ricks' Book Crypt. You can also follow this show on Facebook by looking up the Night Crew podcast. Hey, and did I mention I'm on TikTok? It's Brad Ricks Author over there. One word, no spaces. All right, enough of my updates. On today's episode, I sat down with author Megan Stockton. She's the author of books such as Pink Neon, Bluejay, and Lovely Dark and Deep. We talk about her writing style, her approach to self-publishing, and writing in multiple dark genres. Into the virtual studio we go. All right, so today I'm thrilled to have the wonderful Megan Stockton joining me. Megan, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So first question I typically like to ask, it's that wonderful question that we as authors get all the freaking time, which is like, hey, tell me about your writing career. How long you been doing it? What was your first book? All that fun stuff.
Well, as far as like writing as like an author, my first book came out so I wrote it in college. It's epic. It's like a dystopian thriller kind of book. So I wrote it in college and then tried to like shop it around to like agents and stuff, because at the time self-publishing wasn't quite as accessible. And so it sat there for a couple of years, and then I did the whole self-publishing thing and got onto that. So it started there. I learned a whole lot from that experience because I did not know what I was doing. And then
any of us know what we're really doing? No,
I still don't now. I learn something every time I sit down to publish a new book. I'm like, I got this time. Like it's no problem. And then Amazon, they got something that's wrong. So there'll always be something. So yes, that's where it started with that. And then obviously I do mostly horror. I do dark romance under a pen name, but I like to dabble in like the dystopian stuff and all the horror adjacent, thrillers, crime thrillers and stuff like that.
So now all your stuff is self-published.
Yeah, all of it except D&T did Bluejay and Impulse, so that's like indie publisher. Everything else is self-published. I have something coming out at some point with Wicked House, but then other than that, I really prefer self-publishing. I've realized overall. Is it
more just kind of being in the mix of every step of it, or what's the draw to self versus even a small publisher like a Wicked House or Crystal Lake, or, compared to self?
Well, for me, it's not really it's not something that like if you were like a new author and you were like, oh, which one do you recommend? It's not even that I recommend self-publishing, because I think it's great if you're just starting out and you can have somebody that helps you a little bit through all the tedious stuff like editing and formatting and, all of that. That takes a lot of stress off of you. But I'm allergic to commitment. I don't do well with deadlines. I don't do well with deadlines. I have like this weird, like, there's like a little brat in my head. And so if I know I need to do something or I'm supposed to do something, I'm not going to do it. And I don't know why I'm like that, but I've always been like that. I feel like I let people down when we have to be involved together. So usually I prefer to just do it myself. Then I don't have to worry about, I have to have this turned in by X date or whatever. And then I like to be able to do things the way that I want to do it and not have to worry about, well, this is industry standard, or this is how this is supposed to be, even if it's probably the better way. I don't want to do it that way. So that just for me personally, I'm happier self-publishing overall. But I mean, I've worked with some great publishers with anthologies, and then, some of the novellas and stuff like that. And even this novel that's coming up, I mean, like, it's not that I've had a negative experience. They're all great, and I support them, everywhere I can. But just for me personally, I'm happier when I can just do it myself.
Gotcha. All right. So what made you want to become a writer?
Oh, I don't feel like I had a choice. I started I tell everybody, there's like storytellers, there's writers, and then there's authors, and I started as a storyteller. My sister, she's been like my biggest champion in writing and stuff like that my entire life. And when we were younger, I would memorize Edgar Allan Poe stories and I would tell them to her, and she loved it. But eventually, you run out of material. Changing small aspects like the ending, or I would throw in a twist that she didn't expect because she had heard it before, and she knew what was coming. And eventually it just got to the point where I was like, well, I can just make up entire stories start to finish, instead of, fan fiction. So I started doing it that way. And I feel like my head's always really busy and stuff like that. And writing kind of helps keep everything kind of quiet. And it's just an outlet. So I would go crazy, I think, if I wasn't writing. So even when I wasn't publishing or when I wasn't an author, I was always writing. Even if it just sat there and nobody ever saw it. And it didn't matter because I was doing it for me first, and I still do it for me first. So yeah, it's just, I felt like I never had a choice.
Gotcha. All right. So why horror?
I don't know. That's another thing that it's always been like that. Horror and fantasy were like the loves of my life as far as books when I was younger. And I've written some fantasy stuff too. And like I said, anything horror adjacent, I like to write. I love crime thrillers. I like to write crime thrillers. I like the dark romance stuff just because I can lean into those more horror aspects, and stuff like that. But even in it wasn't just books, it was movies and stuff like that. Like just growing up, that was what we were drawn to, and so it's that was another thing that's just how it happened. I always loved horror.
Yeah, same. It's always been I always say horror is kind of like that roller coaster of emotions,
Yeah.
You don't necessarily get that in other genres.
Yeah.
And there's usually the normal beats that you have to do in other genres. There's the, if it's a romance, at the end that they're probably going to get together and all that. But with horror, I said normal romance, not like dark romance.
No.
But with horror, I mean, it can be a happy ending. It could be a sad ending. It could be an ambiguous ending. It could be whatever you want.
Yeah, horror is it encompasses so much too. You've got all kinds of, everybody always talks about what subgenres do you write in? And there's so much that covers so much. And I feel like horror has also always been kind of alt, kind of punk. You know what I mean? It's always been other, and I always kind of identified with that, growing up and stuff. And so I feel like that's a big aspect of it too. So I think it's a very versatile genre, and I think if people give it a chance, it can speak to anybody. There's something there for anybody.
Right. No, I definitely agree. I mean, I write horror also. So yes, yeah. I definitely agree. So I know you also have a day job and stuff. So and you get husband and kids. And so how do you find time to write?
I don't know. I'm like a really bad example when it comes to how to do things, in a productive way or in a efficient way. I don't have time specifically set aside to write. And I don't have I don't set myself daily writing goals as far as hey, I want to do so many words this week or today or whatever. Anytime I have a little bit of time and I think that I can sit down and I don't know if it's like this for every writer, but I have to engage. So I have to sit down and then engage in the process. And so if something comes up and I have to get up, I'm disengaging. And then I have to sit back down and get back into it. It's not like I can just sit and just start. It just doesn't work like that for me. Right. So I try to make sure I've got enough time to sit down and kind of and make sure I've got the muse, to get started on it. And it's just whenever I have time. Sometimes it's I don't sleep very well. So sometimes it's odd hours, I'll get up and it's there's nothing going on. Everybody's asleep. So I'll sit and write then. I get quite a bit done on the weekends because my kids are they kind of do their own thing. So if we don't have plans, then I'll do that. I take notes on my phone when something, strikes me. I'm hey. And then I've got portable word processors that I use when I travel. I keep one just in case something comes up that I want to write down. So it's chaos wherever there's a free moment.
Whenever the mood strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were talking about kind of engaging and disengaging, like I've seen people at like conventions, the conferences stuff that we go to, where they're sit back and they're scribbling in their notebook and they're, like writing like at the table. And I'm like, I always see that and go, I don't know how you do that. Because to me, like there's just so much happening that, you would kind of using your, engage, like you're constantly would kind of be switching on and off the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand that process at all.
Yeah, no, that's how it is for me too. It's almost like I'm traveling somewhere. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go in here and do this, and somebody's calling me out of the room. So then I have to walk back into that metaphorical room to start again. And so I can take notes, and inspiration may hit me somewhere, and I'll jot something down. Like a lot of dialogue or notes about a scene or something like that. But I can't just like sit and write and then look up and then start talking to somebody and we have a full-on conversation and then sit back down and start again. It's mentally exhausting.
Right.
It feels like an active process, like you're moving in and out of that space.
Right. Because you like my writing, I'm usually, in my office and it's early morning and the lights are off and, it kind of allows me to kind of sit in the world. And that kind of coming in and out of the world the whole time would definitely, it's not very productive. Yeah,
no, that's how it is for me too.
Yeah. And I definitely agree on like I don't set myself a daily word count either. I have if I can get to, I would love to be, that kind of thing. But I learned a while back, and I was actually talking on, so like Joe asked me to give a little presentation on his masterminds little group he did yesterday or Saturday. And I talked there about, if you see stuff about like, Stephen King said you write 6 pages a day and all this stuff. It's like, some people are like, nope, it's got to be 1,000 words a day. I was like, but if you force it and you're writing like 1,000 words of crap and then tomorrow you just delete 950 words, like what did you really do?
Well, and two, I feel like, of course, depending on how your mind works, I mean, do you really want to set yourself up for failure? And then you have that, like, it's hard enough. I feel like a lot of creatives struggle with like, I mean, imposter syndrome too, but like just like that feeling of like, inadequacy, not just in what you're putting out, but even the process. Like, am I writing fast enough and putting stuff out fast enough? And then you've got to, a lot of people, am I letting my family down because I'm constantly trying to get on my computer and shut the doors? And, it's just like, so you've got all of that working against you already because it's, it's a very labor intensive and takes up a lot of time and stuff like that. It's like, do you really want to set up to be like, well, I have, I'm supposed to write 2,000 words a day and I've written 20 words this week. Did I tell you, what's the point? So I prefer not to set myself up to feel bad about it when I already feel bad about it, because I mean, that's just how my brain works. I mean, some people may be a little more optimistic and positive about the whole thing, but I would rather just do it as it works for me. And I know some people need that like goalpost, like that's where I'm headed and that's what I'm doing. But that's the beautiful thing about the process is like, there are so many different ways to do it, and there's not like a right way. So just figuring out what works for you. And, I know everybody has like their heroes and like, like Stephen King's like, well, this is what you should be doing or, whatever. And you'll pay people to be like in a group and they're like, this is how you have to write this novel. And that's easy too, to feel like a failure because it's like, oh, my heroes do it this way and I can't stack up, but you'll figure it out. Figure out your own method.
Correct. Yep. So we talked a little bit about your writing process. Do you consider yourself more of a pantser or a plotter or somewhere in between?
No, definitely a pantser. Yeah. I can't plot to save my life. Yes. And it's another one of those things where it's like, if I plot it out, I will not do it. I tried once to just try to be more productive, just like, hey, if I have a plan and in my Patreon, Sally Felix was like, never plot anything again because I didn't do it. Like I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done. So I'm definitely a pantser.
Just sit down and just let it flow and see where the characters take you.
Exactly. Just along for the ride.
just along for the ride. How would you describe your style?
Oh man, I don't know. Also probably kind of chaotic. I write pretty like stream of consciousness kind of. Not as much so as like Stephen Grant Jones or something like that, not quite like that, but I sometimes lean a little purple prose, not real bad, but sometimes more than like the genre calls for, especially when I'm doing like extreme horror, splatterpunk, sometimes a little purple probably that people like. So yeah, I guess like I try to write cinematically because I typically see the story as I'm writing it. So I'm describing everything like a scene. and I set my chapters up almost like scenes. So the scene, that's the end of the chapter. I'm big into movies, so that's probably, and my husband's like an indie filmmaker, so I think that kind of lends to it too. So everything's very visual. And I'm pretty detail oriented, especially with the senses, stuff like that. I don't know how I would describe my style. I don't know.
You're like, damn it, Brad. I don't like that question.
You let me know.
Now, you said your husband's an indie filmmaker. Has he turned any of your stories into short films or anything like that?
So we've done a couple of shorts. I don't know if any of those shorts are in anthologies. I'm trying to think. But we've done a couple of shorts. We've turned them into short films. And then it's been several years ago now, probably 5 years ago, we did kind of like a run and gun version of Quiet Pretty Things, which is my crime thriller. We filmed it in less than 7 days of principal shooting on a budget of $500. I mean, literally, it was the craziest week of my life. And so like what we ended up with is like not fantastic, but like for what we did and how we did it, it was like really impressive. And we had a whole lot of fun with it. We had to really cut it down to like, because the book's alternating points of view. So we selected one point of view, and made it's like an hour and a half, I think. I think the film's like an hour and a half out of that book. So that's the only full length thing we've done. We've toyed with doing some of the other books, but it's hard when it's like the short stories aren't as bad, but when you have two different creatives, we work really well together, but we will butt heads on creative differences and stuff like that. I think that honestly makes a better product in the end. So just some shorts and then the one feature, but we'll eventually try to do another feature. I don't know what book, but we've sat and played with the idea of a couple, but it's time to ends.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about a few of your books. So, like, I know I've read Lovely, Dark, and Deep. I think I have a signed copy back here behind me somewhere. And I did absolutely love that one. I'm a vampire nut, and so it is very vampire-esque in its story. What's your typical elevator pitch for that one, and kind of what drove you to write it? If
I'm at like an event or something, I'll tell people it's like 30 Days of Night. If it were set on an island and the vampires were like mermaids or sirens. And it's more atmospheric, of course, if people are browsing my other books. I'm like, this one's a little quieter, a little more atmospheric or whatever. And that one was inspired by 30 Days of Night. I loved like the isolated setting.
Yep.
And like very limited cast. And the whole like, natural elements kind of, being part of that isolation. And I've always wanted to do like not necessarily like an oceanic horror, but something kind of like, like coastal town kind of vibe. And we had gone to the Dominican Republic. I can't remember, but we went and we got off on this island, and I did a tour with this like local guy, and he took us around. He's like, yeah, this entire island's like 7 miles wide. And I was like, this is insane. So then I wrote like that 6 Mile Island, is only 6 miles long, I was like, it's the coolest like small town setting. So definitely inspired by 30 Days of Night, but I wanted to kind of put that vampire spin on like sirens, kind of like sirens, that kind of creature, And then after I published that, I had never watched the show Midnight Mass. Have you watched it?
Mm-hmm.
I had never watched it. And somebody's like, this is just like that show. And I was like, okay, well, it's not just like it. But had I watched that before I published that book, I would have never published it, just because it's vampires on an island.
Still very different.
Very different, yes.
On it, yeah. But it actually, until you just brought it, like, I wouldn't necessarily have made the comparison between the two. I definitely see like the 30 Days of Night thing.
Yes.
But I love 30 Days of Night. I'm actually wearing a Lost Boy shirt right now. We're talking about vampire stuff. And so, so I definitely see the 30 Days of Night because that isolation that they have in that.
And that's what a lot of times I'll wrap like more towards like a vibe than like a plot or whatever. And so that was definitely like that, and Salem's Lot were like my vibe markers, for that book. So that was the two things I was going after. And I did some little Easter eggs here and there, like, the priest last name being Mears, was like a Salem Slot reference. And there were a couple of other like little Easter eggs and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely 30 Days of Night was the vibe that I was going to.
Nice. Now, how does that one compare to some of your other work? I mean, you said it was a little quieter. I've heard, Bluejay and Pink Neon are amazing, but also a lot more hardcore than Lovely, Dark, and Deep. So tell us a little bit about your, some of the others that you have.
So Bluejay, I would consider like extreme horror, like probably a little more extreme. It's like, it's extreme light, I guess, because I feel like if you're like a hardcore extreme horror reader, you may read it and it's not going to, punch all those boxes for you, but it is more extreme in its content. It's about these guys, who get basically steal tickets to like a club that they think is like a snuff simulation club, but it's like a murder sex club. So, it's a little more extreme, and then Pink Neon, I consider splatterpunk, but it's a happy medium between like my more character-driven stuff that's like leans a little more descriptive and purpley, and then splatterpunk. So it's a good happy medium, but it's still pretty graphic. There's some pretty graphic scenes in it. And then Impulse is just straight up like torture porn. It's the POV characters like a piece of shit. Can I say? I didn't ask you what I couldn't go.
Oh yeah, no, you can. That's fine.
I figured, but I just, So
it's a horror podcast. I have some episodes where like I did an episode talking about Vlad the Impaler and all the crap that he did to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the POV character is a teacher who has taken advantage of some of his students in the past and stuff, and he's just despicable. And so you're in his like, it's not first person, but you're still in his head the whole time, And so you want all of this to happen and worse to happen to it, So the book is just about him getting what he deserves. And it's short. It's a novella. It's shorter than Bluejay even. It's very short. So it's extreme horror, just kind of like there's a lot of grossness and then lots of torture. And then I've got, and Nobody Knows It But Me is very quiet. It's grief horror. That's probably my most purple book. It's got some, I wouldn't say like weird literary devices, but I've got some like odd chapters that are like really cryptic flashbacks and stuff like that. You kind of got to piece it together, and and then I've got like a crime thriller that's not super descriptive. It's still pretty brutal, but it's not as graphic as some of the extreme stuff. So I'm kind of like all over the place with the content and as far as like what you're going to get,
Well, so talking about your books now, I always like asking this question: of all the books that you've written, what would you say is your favorite?
That's the crime thriller. It's also my least read book, which that's always how that goes, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's, I don't know if it's because I feel like it gets the most consistently positive reviews. It's just less people read it. But I don't know if it's because it's a crime thriller and my primary market's more horror oriented, or if it's just because there are so many like crime thriller books out there that just like, it's hard to stand out.
Lost in the midst there.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure what it is about it being a hard sell. But it's my favorite. It's one of the POVs is the serial killer. So, you get in his head a little bit. And it's sad as fuck. It's like my Shakespearean type ending. But yeah, it's definitely my favorite. So nobody reads it.
Now, do you find that the same, like when you're at events, conference and stuff, do you sell it well, or like, does it sell well there?
It sells way better in person, like at events, than it does online. And I don't know if that's just because I'm decent at selling whatever. If I can talk to you and I feel like I'm getting the vibe that that's something I can sell to you, then I'll probably sell it to you. So I don't know if that's what it is or what, but definitely at events, I sell more of it than I do online. It's on KU and it's been getting a lot of page reads lately. I don't really know why, but I'm hoping it might be because I didn't put anything out last year in the Pink Neons. Maybe people are like, well, might as well read this one now because there's nothing else to read. But, so yeah, it's a hard sell online for some reason.
Yeah. I have very similar with my debut novel, So Fear Not the Dead. Like in person, I sell that one. That one is probably one of my, between that one and Night Crew, like my top sellers in person.
Yeah.
Online, like I don't ever get any love for it online. Yeah. It's just there.
I don't know what it is.
Every so often, like in a month, like I'll see like enough page reads. It looks like it got read twice, or something like that. But in person, like it's one of my top sellers in person. And so it's interesting which ones sell better in person versus online.
It is, yeah. There's something. I don't know what it is. I've sometimes thought it might be the cover for mine. Because it has a very, like pink, the cover's pink and like pastel-y. And so I don't know if that's part of it. So I actually have the paperback pulled right now. So you can't buy the paperback online, but it's still on KU and you can get the ebook. So I'm going to try it with a different cover, and see if that helps. Cause then maybe, people browsing online, maybe they're looking at the cover and they're panning it, but then in person, you're catching them, and I don't know.
You're having that conversation. And so it's sometimes easier to convince people online than it is just as they're just scrolling through and trying to.
Yeah.
Yep. How would you say your writing style or process has changed over the years?
I don't know that my style has changed much. I feel like I'm more confident, like in the last 10 years, more confident than I was previously. And that's mostly just because I feel like, especially as like indie publishing became more accessible, and, you're able to read people who weren't all polished up by, your traditional publishing houses and stuff, and realize that you can let your freak flag fly, So I feel like that's definitely something that's changed, is I'm a little more confident with just writing how I want to, like, without having to worry about fitting into a box or whatever, because I can do whatever I want. And then, honestly, that's probably the biggest thing, is just the confidence to be able to do what I want to do, how I want to do it.
All right. So what scares you, and how does that inspire your writing?
So my fears, I've never, I'm afraid of small spaces. I'm really claustrophobic. And I do occasionally work in the feelings of claustrophobia, but never in small spaces, which is weird. So I guess I use those sensations that I consider unpleasant, and will incorporate those into moments of panic or emotional distress, or, something like that. Occasionally have some crushing injuries in a book, that I'll incorporate that stuff. But that's really the only thing that really scares me, is really small spaces, and then more concepts, abstract stuff, losing my kids. And I don't do a lot of child death or stuff like that. Obviously I've done it some, but I don't do a whole lot of that anyway, because that would be, obviously all fear, I guess, is negative, but that would be something that would more negatively impact me mentally as I would write. So that would be something I would probably engage with a whole lot. It does happen in a couple of books. It happens in an upcoming book, and it's pretty distressing. But other than that, I don't feel like my real life fears really play too much into how I write or what I write as far as horror goes.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed it was some people that it's usually kind of two very extremes. It's either this is what I'm scared of, and I put it into every book, or it's this is what I'm scared of, and I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I don't want to touch it. Yeah, I don't. The kid thing is one of those things that obviously I love animals. I have an animal die in almost every book, and I don't do that on purpose. But that's something I love animals, so I do that. And actually freaking hate kids. I love my kids. Freaking hate everybody else's kids. But I do. I'm just being honest.
I'm kind of the other way. I don't mind kids. Mine can go away, but I don't mind kids.
See, I cannot stand kids, but I love my children. My kids are I love my kids. And I know it's probably just because they're my kids, but I think they're the coolest people on the planet. I'm obviously that, I guess it's just a typical parental fear of just irrational things happening to my kids. But I will occasionally write that in, and it's honestly more the parental grief that comes after that's distressing to me, more so than what happens to the kid, honestly. So maybe that might be something that I kind of, because in an upcoming book, and it's kind of a spoiler, so I won't say anything, a kid dies in a really traumatic way. And several chapters are centered around the parent's grief. And that was a little difficult for me to write, just because that's one of those things that gets to me a little bit. But even in movies, even that really long, grief, drawn out grief scene that the mom has there when, that stuff happens to the kid. I don't worry about spoilers this far after the release of that, I guess, but you know what I mean?
No.
That was upsetting to me. And then there's another movie, It Comes at Night. Is that what it's called? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like kind of a
don't
dystopian horror movie. It's really good. It was really underrated. A kid gets killed on accident in that movie, and you don't see anything. It was kind of a low budget movie. You don't see anything, but the mom screams for like 10 minutes. That got me. that's what. So yeah.
Yeah, and Hereditary, all in all, like, I saw the film. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but like the one scene that always gets me is when they're driving in the car and the girl is like hanging out the window, and then and then she hits the pole. Yeah,
yeah.
So that's every time I'm like, ooh,
yeah. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it either.
Show that scene to my kids and be like, that's why we don't hang out the car.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. So, I did prep you for this beforehand, but I started the Night Crew podcast as a spinoff of my own series, The Night Crew, which is about a team of monster hunters. And so, I always like to ask the authors that come on, what is your favorite monster? So that way we can, still kind of keep these episodes grounded in monsters. So Miss Stockton, what is your favorite monster?
That's hard because I've been thinking about it this whole time. Because I like the idea of some monsters more than like their classic stories. Like I love Mothman, but as far as like because I wrote a Mothman short one time, it was so much fun. But I didn't go with like the traditional storyline. So I guess I like the concept or whatever of that creature. So I like Mothman. I like anything that's like a shape-shifting thing, like doppelgangers or Wendigo, skinwalkers, any of that stuff. I like that stuff a lot because I live in Appalachia, so there's that too. But werewolves, I like werewolves a lot. But I like them, and I know this is unpopular. I like them more when they're a metaphor for something, So I like werewolves a whole lot.
So in my scripted episodes, just here recently, I finished up a series all about werewolves. And so talking about a lot of different aspects of werewolves. So it was funny. I started doing vampires first because, it's the Night Crew pod, and that's the first book is about. And then I went to doing werewolves, and the kind of juxtaposition of the two was actually very interesting, where the vampire tends to be more about, like control and all that, where the werewolf is just kind of just like letting go. And it's just like this beast within that just comes out. And
I've, Lovely Dark and Deep, of course, was kind of vampire-esque, and then I feel like in a lot of media, vampires lean kind of erotic, like even like, you're like Anne Rice vampires are very like sexualized and stuff. And I love like scary vampires though, like really scary vampires. They're fine when they're sexualized too. I like them like that too. Not like your romance vampires though. Even though Lestat, I guess, was kind of like romance vampire too, but one horrific. But you know what I'm saying. Sorry, the cat shrugged on this cord. I would like to do more with vampires, like scary vampires, to kind of play with that in writing. I've done 2 werewolf books. Well, I've done 1 werewolf book, and I have 1 coming out. My first werewolf book the werewolf was a metaphor for like generational trauma and stuff like that. And it was the quiet horror one, and nobody knows it but me. So it's like you don't get all the fun werewolf stuff. You get just like, it's the lack of seeing the werewolf. Honestly, you see it, just a handful of pages or whatever. And I feel like werewolves can be very effective that way. Whereas I feel like vampires have to have a little more screen time to be effective for whatever reason. Maybe we identify more with the werewolf thing, inside us.
Well, that's the part of the research and stuff I did whenever I was doing stuff on werewolves. Like I said, a lot of it, it's kind of comes from that kind of primal, just that need just to, just sometimes just to stand on the mountaintop and scream.
Yeah.
And, so it's just that kind of release is what a lot of werewolf stuff kind of evolves out of. That creature within that's coming out.
What's your favorite depiction of a werewolf? Like, what's your personal favorite? My
personal favorite? So I love the Howling movie. So the original Howling, American Werewolf in London, that one's, the special effects in it, which were really just practical effects, but that it was done in the 80s, and
it's
the
still
stuff
the
that
best
they did,
transformation scene.
Oh yeah, bar none. One thing though that I find interesting, and it really kind of started with going all the way back to Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr. and all that, is the werewolf as a kind of a tragic figure.
Yes.
There's so much. You look at American Werewolf in London, you look at Wolfman, you look at a lot of these where it's, Monster Squad at the end of it, when he gets shot, the first thing he says is thank you. And that, they don't want to be doing what they're doing. It's a loss of control. They can't help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that aspect too. Like that's one of those things, like I said, like anytime it like leans into like the metaphor of, like your like instinct versus that, like these civilized boxes that society's put us in and stuff like that, or just rage or whatever. I love it when they lean that way. And most of them do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where, with things like a vampire, for instance, and, or you get into your slashers, the Michael Myers and all that, those, it's like they know what they're doing, setting aside the strain, for instance, but even in the strain, I mean, the creatures are doing what they're doing because that's just what they want to do, or that's what they're programmed to do. But like I said, Werewolves has that kind of contradiction where it's, when they turn into the wolf, they have no more control. They can't, outside of Twilight, when they, suddenly, burst out into big, huge wolves. But
that doesn't count. It's not a werewolf.
I make fun of Twilight so much on my podcast. So
I never was. Did you ever watch? Oh my God, Hemlock Grove?
I never saw that one.
It's a television show. It was based on a book series. I never read the book series, but there are werewolves in that show that turn into just wolves. Like they just turn into wolves. But honestly, it's almost like a hybrid of like, because they can turn at will, I think, if I recall correctly. But like the more they do, the more human they lose. Like, and you can eventually lose all of your humanity and get stuck in this like stage. And it was a pretty cool depiction of werewolves as just a wolf, like just as an animal. I think that's the only one I can think of where I was like I like it, them turning into the wolf. And honestly, the transformation scene in that was kind of cool, considering he just turns into a animal. But otherwise, the Twilight wolves and vampires are not for me.
No, not at all. Do you read your book reviews? And if so, how do you handle negative ones?
So I do not read my book reviews unless, now if I get like tagged in a review, I'll read it or watch the video or whatever. And I have people who will send me like, hey, I saw this review of your book or whatever. And if I'm scrolling and I see one, I'm going to read it. But I don't go to like Amazon or Goodreads or search in groups or whatever and look. I don't do that. Mostly because I feel like, so the reviews are not for me. They're for other readers, and I'm really self-critical anyway. And I'm not going to change anything based on what the reviews say anyway. So it's not like I'm going to improve because I read that you hated the freaking name of this character, or because you felt like there were too many instances of the word fuck, or like if you felt like my character's really shallow, or you hate my ambiguous endings. That's popular. Like I'm not gonna change any of that. So it's not like I'm workshopping myself or anything. So I just don't read them unless I either stumble upon one or one is sent to me. And that keeps me in my happy place. I mean, everybody likes to get a positive review and hear a nice thing. So if you have a nice thing, feel free to message me the nice thing. Don't message me any not nice things. But otherwise, they're just, the reviews are not for me. And I used to read them like years ago. And I just decided to quit doing that because I don't ever want a reviewer to feel like, well, I can't leave honest review because she might see it. I don't want to hurt her feelings, or just be afraid, to leave an honest review or whatever. But I feel like that's a unique problem to like indie publishing.
Right.
The author's probably going to see it at some point, and they're more accessible than, a really big name. And I feel like, reviews are for other readers, and you want the right people to get to your book. So they need to know the good and the bad. And if it's not for them, you don't want them to read it,
Right.
Because then everybody's happy. So just personally, no.
No, that makes sense. And there are plenty of times when if you try to kind of more mass market your book to people that aren't really the readers of that, you said, Pink Neon leans more splatter. Well, if it goes into a just general horror, group, and they would read and they're like, oh my God, I hated this.
Yeah.
Well, it really wasn't for you.
Yeah. And that's a thing too with like marketing books at like events and stuff. Like I personally am not trying to obviously I want to sell as many books as I can. But I want to sell you the book that you're going to like. And if none of my books are for you, I would rather you walk away without one than you get it. You wasted your time and money and you're unhappy. And, now if I ever release something you might like, you're probably not going to look at it,
Right. True.
And that's a thing with like with the extreme and splatter stuff. Like sometimes I think, well, maybe I should have used a pen name so that you can more easily, because I don't put any kind of indicator on any of those books that they're extreme. I guess you could, by the synopsis, I guess you should probably be able to infer that, but you may not. I did with the dark romance use a pen name, and it's not because I care that people know that I write it. I don't care. It's just like, I feel like for horror people, if they accidentally get a dark romance book, it's fine. But some of the dark romance people, if they fix that Pink Neon, it wouldn't be fine. So, it just, I don't want somebody to end up with something that's either going to affect them negatively mentally or, it's going to waste their time and money, consuming a product that was never for that. So,
and I've heard that where if you swap genres to, like that's where, unless it's something you're trying to hide, but a pen name kind of comes in handy because from the algorithm standpoint, if I decide to write a young adult fantasy, well, that may not be the same readers who would want to read a night group or, something that's more deep horror because they're fantasy. But if they pull up my name and like as a, they're reading my fantasy books and like, oh, look, this one may be something.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that before. Like if you're jumping genres, that's a good time to maybe do a pen name to keep one persona different than the other from an algorithm standpoint.
The only negative thing with that for us is it's easy for me to sell a book as Megan Stockton. But like with the dark romance stuff, it's like I had zero, it's like starting over.
Yes, that's why you're running 2 social medias. You're starting from scratch.
And I've basically with it, so I started the dark romance stuff, a serialized stuff on Vella years ago. So I've just recently decided, I'll start putting them out as novels because they were popular in the serialized thing. And I chose to go with the pen name, and I've not been running full social media stuff like I did with the horror, just because I can barely keep up with what I do here. You know what I mean? Like, so I have like a TikTok for it, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I'll post about it occasionally on this page, but it's like a juggling act, you know? So it's just, so part of me wishes I would have separated the extreme and splatterpunk stuff just so I don't ever unintentionally hurt a reader. But then the other part of me is like, could I even keep up with it if I did?
All right. Well, let's see. We kind of wrap stuff up. Who would you say are your biggest literary influences? Jason
Pargin, is that his name? I used to go by David Wong. He wrote the like John Dies at the End books and the Zoe. I don't remember the other series he's got. I love his style and his like voice. So I like him a whole lot. I wouldn't say that I like emulate him or anything, but he makes me happy as like a creative when I read his stuff. Really like Cormac McCarthy. William Giraldi, he only wrote one book that I've read, and it's Hold the Dark, but that book had a big impact on me. I think it's like beautifully written and really underrated. So that's probably the biggest ones. But yeah.
All right. So outside of writing, what are your hobbies?
Do I have time for those? Obviously, movies, big into movies. We watch a whole lot of movies, go to a lot of movies. I play video games.
You're a gamer?
I'm a gamer.
What's your go-to?
So me and my daughter play Red Dead 2 a whole lot. My son's big into like indie horror on like Steam. So we'll do like Rainbow and, stuff like that stuff together. We play Helldivers 2 together. And so my kids also are gamers. I like PC gaming more than anything. And I don't do a whole lot of online gaming other than when I play with them. Like what's like Helldivers or Red Dead, I play with her. But yeah, so I play lots of that stuff. I play a lot of Civilization 2. And I know we're on Civilization 20 or something at this point. but I bought Civilization 2 when I was like 11. And I still play. I play so much. It's just like a real-time strategy. I don't know if you're familiar with that So anyway, I play it a lot. So yeah, that's what we play. And then I'm big into hockey. The Bruins are my team. Guess that's it. Like my animals a lot. Have a dog. Have a lot of cats. We live on a farm. And then reading. I read a whole lot, obviously.
Yeah. That's typically kind of goes along with writing. Is we're a lot of us are very avid readers as well.
Yes.
Well, any lasting little advice for aspiring authors?
Write for you first is what I like to tell everybody, because you'll never be disappointed. Don't try to write to market. I know you feel like you have to because it's like it is a business model, I guess. But write for you first. You're never going to be unhappy. Make yourself happy.
Awesome. Great advice. Yeah.
Good advice.
So where can, like both of my listeners learn more about you?
It has all of my books on it. You can purchase like signed copies or t-shirts or whatever. And then, of course, my books are all on Amazon. And if you want to contact me, you can either reach out on my website through the contact form, or you can just message me on Facebook.
Awesome. And I'll make sure and put links in the show notes so that people can find it, can find all your stuff. Definitely, go check out Megan's works, since she has a wide variety of stuff from crime dramas to extreme and splatterpunk, and all walks in the middle, and even some dark romance stuff, which I don't know why, but yeah. So definitely, check out Megan's stuff. Now I know you have some events that you're doing this summer, because I know you're coming for the Texas Horror Lit Fest, right?
Yeah.
You'll be down here in Texas with me for that. So that's going to be fun. What else you got going? Are you going into some of the others around the country?
Yeah. I'm going to Massacre on the Mountain and ShiverCon.
I'll see both of those also.
Why do I feel like there's another one? Those for sure. There were a couple more that I was kind of dancing around, but I think as of right now, I think that's all that I've committed to. So.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'll, we'll, the two of us will be at all three of those. That's going to be awesome. Yeah. I know. So
the only reason you need to go is us.
I know, right? I mean, come on. So, all right. Well, I'll go ahead and end this for the night. So I appreciate you hanging out with me and chatting. And hopefully the little technical problems I had didn't mess anything up. But yeah, so I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, that's it for the Night Crew podcast and my conversation with Megan Stockton. I have links to where you can find Megan in the show notes. Follow her on all the socials and pick up her books. So, if you had a good time, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and leave a rating. Hopefully, that wonderful 5 stars. If you want updates on my writing, you can, of course, follow me on Facebook or TikTok. Well, I talked about all those in the beginning. You can find copies of my novels wherever you like to buy books. But if you hop over to my website, bradricks.com, you can purchase signed copies of any of my novels and get yourself a Night Crew podcast t-shirt. I'm Brad Ricks, reminding you to stay out of graveyards after dark, question people who don't show up in mirrors, and don't be afraid to break some rules now and then. Until next time, keep your curtains drawn, your sense of humor sharp, and your blood inside your body. Thanks for listening.